Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Buckets. If you're over on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and drop a like so the video does better in the algorithm. That is much appreciated. Also, go ahead and check out my new My League series over on my 2K channel. I am streaming that over on Twitch. I have a trip over this weekend, so there's going to be a couple of days off, but I should be streaming fairly consistently there for the foreseeable future. So click that link, go check me out on Twitch. Today, we are doing a type of video that I do 2 times a year. I do a 2-parter, and the most overrated video rather than the most underrated video always does a lot better because negativity sells. I'm not happy about it. That's the way it exists. So I'm going to have to be perceived as tearing people down more than lifting them up, even though I'm doing both. I will say at the start of the video, I say this every time I make this video. Overrated does not mean mad. Overrated just means I think they're a little bit worse than their perception in general by NBA fans. Also, my perception of what people's perceptions is can be different from yours. For me, I hear a lot of arguments for these players, more so than most people do because of my job. But, you know, in your circle, maybe this player isn't overrated. But at large, with what I generally see, I think these are the most overrated players on each NBA team. For the Atlanta Hawks, it is Clint Capella. Oh, shit. Wait, let me also say this. You can be overrated by the franchise, you can be overrated by the fan base, and you can be overrated by the media. There are different ways to be overrated. So for the Atlanta Hawks, Clint Capella, NBA fans ain't hyping up Clint Capella like that, but Atlanta seems to think he's better than he is. I think Onyeka Okongwu is better than him at this point, and he should be starting, so that's why I think he's overrated. For the Boston Celtics, unfortunately, there is only one pick to make here, and that is not my fault. That is because only one player has really actually risen up the ranks for people because of the championship run that the Celtics went on. Like, it's interesting, no one really was like, okay, Jason Tatum is him now, but Jaylen Brown, he got lifted up a lot, getting that conference finals MVP. You're seeing the argument that Jaylen is better than Jason way more now. I think Jaylen is a top 20 player, and I didn't think that before this final series, or before the playoff series, rather. However, I've seen some people saying he's like top 15. I ain't with that. I'm just not. I cannot get behind that. I do not think there are less than 15 players better than Jaylen Brown in the NBA. For the Miami Heat, I am going to go with Tyler Hero. He's kind of in the Hall of Fame of fake good players. He's a good off-ball shooter, but pretty much everything else with him as a scorer feels pretty damn forced. I'd rather have a lot of other players in his position. Like, if Tyler is a fundamental, huge part of the shot creation on your team, well, you're probably not going to be a very good team, especially in the shot creation department. For the Chicago Bulls, of course, Josh Giddey. He's going to put up decent box score stats, and then everyone's going to be slobbering all over it, but the reality will remain that his play style is not valuable in the modern NBA. The true point guard archetype is not valuable in the NBA, especially at the level of volume with his level of ball handling. You do not want a ball handler who is inept at scoring. You just don't. Maybe in a backup role at some times, and if you have an offensive option that needs to get set up. But if in total you have a guy dribbling the ball that the defense isn't scared of, bad thing to have. Bad way to do your offense. It's not the way we do things anymore, and I'm very sad that Chicago is doing this. For the Charlotte Hornets, Miles Bridges, no need to elaborate on that one. For the Washington Wizards, I'm going with Jonas Valanciunas. Rudy once described Jonas as training wheels, and that's pretty much how I viewed him ever since. He rebounds and finishes well enough for the center position that he is technically a solid starting center, but I think he's a massive ceiling capper. Like, he gets in the way of your team being as good as it truly could be because he's just not like that for real as a center, and he has a ton of limitations. He doesn't move his feet well. He can't space the floor really. He technically shoots threes every once in a while and shoots a decent percentage, but the volume is remarkably low. I just don't think he's very good. For the Detroit Pistons, Tim Hardaway Jr. Shooters with a Tim Hardaway Jr. type of shot diet, which by that I mean off-screen threes, fading away catch-and-shoot threes, contested catch-and-shoot threes, need to shoot better than 35% from three. Otherwise, you're not really justifying that shot diet, especially given that he's not bringing anything else to the table besides for his three-point shooting. For the Indiana Pacers, Benedict Mathurin, bad playmaking and low volume three-point shooting scorers will forever be overrated. It's not a personal thing with Benedict or like Cam Thomas, who's on this list. This type of player, I think, is on its way out in the NBA. I don't really think we will see Benedict Mathurin types for much longer. He finishes well. He's a decent one-on-one scorer, but he is a black hole on offense who just wants to shoot the ball every time he gets it. He's a terrible playmaker, and he's not really a good defender either. Just scoring the ball in a way that interrupts the flow of your offense isn't good. And I don't think Benedict Mathurin is actually a good player. He's just someone capable of putting up good numbers, and those are not always the same thing. For the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm going to go with Bobby Portis. Bobby is a solid role player, and the kind of role player that Milwaukee understandably likes, especially given Brook Lopez. He's got injury stuff. He's a little bit older, but I really don't think he's the type of role player that Milwaukee needs. And there's a lot of sentimentality around him because of how integral he was off of the bench for their 2021 championship run. But I think that his ability is overrated largely by Bucks fans because of that. And you could easily cash in a better role player that is more suited to the construction of your roster by trading him. But every time I bring that up, Bucks fans yell at me, and I don't know. I think it's ridiculous. For the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm going to go with Paul George. I'm honestly shocked that he made an all-star roster this year because he was not even a top 15 player in his conference. He's now essentially just like a great 3-and-D player, but the D is not as good as it used to be, and his shot creating ability is not as good as it used to be. His athleticism is not as good as it used to be. I think he's a perfect fit in Philly. I think he is in a perfect spot because he is ideally a third option at this point. If it was Paul George from 2 years ago, 3 years ago on this team, I would feel more passionately pro Philadelphia. So yeah, I think he's a little overrated for that reason. For the New York Knicks, Julius Randle, maybe not actually, just because maybe it's Mitchell Robinson instead. I don't think either of them are as good as a lot of people have an impression of. Julius feels like the odd man out on the Knicks, like the Knicks are zigging and Julius is more of a zag kind of guy. They're just leaning on Brunson to do everything, and I get the offense is more dynamic with Julius in there, but I don't know if it's a type of dynamic they really want. I honestly felt like Brunson helio ball with space and then guys who are really good defenders and can create off of the advantages that Brunson makes. I think that's a better play style than Randall's face-up mid-range shots. The Knicks would be wise to lean into that. The Brooklyn Nets, I already said Cam Thomas. Scores in the ISO really well. His three-point volume this season was promising because it increased quite a bit, and that was an area of concern for him. But his playmaking and defense are still awful. Maybe improved, but still awful. He's not someone I would be thrilled to build around. He is an excellent tank commander, however, so you at least have that going for you. For the Toronto Raptors, I am going with Ochai Agbaji, which I'm sure a lot of you are going, who even is that? I was propagandized by one Alex Hoops, who made a video about Ochai, about why he was a sleeper as a rookie, could be a really good player. He stinks. He's really bad. He had a decent rookie year. Otherwise, he's been terrible. For the Orlando Magic, I'm going to go with Franz Wagner, just simply because I don't know that his all-around game is great enough to justify how poor of a three-point shooter he is. I think he's still good, but you're not going to be as good as he could be if that three ball is actually bad. So if that's an issue, I don't really think you can play him next to Paolo, because I don't think Paolo's ever going to be a super strong three-point shooter. He could turn it to a point where it's not really a huge weakness for him. But if you have a guy out there who you feel okay as a three-point shooter, but that's it, especially as like a lead scoring option, you don't want another one of your lead scoring options to be yet another guy whose three ball is questionable. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm going to go with Max Strus. This is similar to my argument for Tim Hardaway Jr. Max has an insane three-point diet, and yet he shoots 35%, so that mark just does not justify the shot diet that he has. You got to shoot better than that if you're going to take like these JJ Redick style falling away three-pointers. For the Dallas Mavericks, Daniel Gafford, it is insane to me that there was any level of debate between him and Lively as for who was better. Like, it was very obvious. I argue a lot that Daniel Gafford is a very loud player who makes very impressive highlight plays, but he doesn't do the little things all that well, especially not as well as Derek Lively. And I think for what his trade value is, you would be better off using the roster spot on a wing rather than a backup center. Like, play Derek Lively 32 minutes a game, get a slightly worse backup center, but like a way better backup wing, for example, someone who you can confidently say will shoot the ball well, someone who you can confidently say will play good defense. I just don't really think Daniel Gafford is as important to this team as a lot of people seem to think. For the OKC Thunder, I would say Lou Dort. I think that Aaron Wiggins, Alex Caruso, and Isaiah Joe all make for better options to start. However, Dort keeps getting that job. I don't know what's up with Mark Daigneault. I don't know if he's got like a tape that he's holding over his head or something. Like, Lou Dort isn't bad. He is capital F fine. He is a fine NBA player. Cool for him to be in your rotation. However, I don't think he should be the long-term starter as he has been the past couple of years. I would rather have Aaron Wiggins' versatility. I would rather have Alex Caruso's defense, playmaking, and if the three-point shooting continues, the three-point shooting he had last season. Or I'd rather have Isaiah Joe being one of the best three-point shooters in the entire NBA. To me, that is better than good defense and mediocre shooting. For the Denver Nuggets, I have to go with Jamal Murray, unfortunately. This is another one that I'm not thrilled about. I don't like having to knock these players, but it is a part of how it goes. I'm kind of sick of the playoff riser shtick, especially because a lot of players are super inconsistent who have that label. Jamal, Jimmy Butler, for example. He was much worse in these playoffs than he was in last year's playoffs. So last year's playoffs, he was overrated as hell. Now I think he's still overrated a little bit because a lot of people would rather say he's that version than the other version. I think the truth is in between. I think he's both players and he's capable of being both players depending on the night. So Jamal, I think a lot of people got too high on him after that playoff run. Obviously, a lot of people have soured on him a little bit more, but I still think I routinely see people overrate Jamal and put him over guys who I think are just simply better. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'm going with Karl Anthony Towns. His inconsistency drives me fucking insane. Like, he has a lot of great moments, but he has a lot of bad moments, and his bad moments make his great moments feel like they aren't fucking worth it. He is capable of doing great things. I shouldn't be wondering if Naz Reid is actually a better player than you. That shouldn't be a thought that has ever crossed my head, but in the playoffs last year, I was like, man, I think the Timberwolves would be better off with Naz and Gobert than with Cat and Gobert. And I believe the on-off numbers support that. Cat puts up decent stats, regularly gets referred to as an all-star caliber player, and I think he even made the all-star team this last year, but I just don't like his game. I was actually really high on Cat a couple of years ago, but I have soured on him since. For the Los Angeles Clippers, Kevin Porter Jr. and Josh Primo. It is insane to choose to employ these two creeps in the same offseason. It's very embarrassing. Luckily, that's the fucking legacy of the Clippers anyway, so it won't change much, but Jesus Christ, guys. Really, you had to just like, oh, let me look at the newest Predator NBA player list. Let's see who we add to the roster. For the Phoenix Suns, I'm going to go with Kevin Durant. I have to stay on brand. That is just the way that it is. But I actually think that modern Kevin Durant is way more overrated than his peak version. Peak Kevin Durant, I completely understand why people said the shit that they do about him, but a lot of people talk about Kevin like he is still in his peak when he very much is not. He is not nearly the athlete that he used to be. He was so good at getting to the rim early in his career. He was one of the most efficient scorers at the basket on high volume in the entire NBA. He only shoots fucking mid-range pull-ups now. Like, his shot diet used to be so diverse, and he got so much credit for being able to do so many different things, being able to score in so many different ways. But now he scores 80% of the time the same exact way, and no one knocks him for it. Also not a great playmaker, not a great defender, a pretty good defender. His three-point volume has always been lower than I would like it to be. Like, the fact that I don't even think Kevin Durant has a season where he took 7 3-pointers a game, which to me is fucking nuts because he's very capable. Yeah, he peaked at 6.7 a game, and currently he is shooting 5.5. Like, why? You are way too good of a three-point shooter to take such low volume, but he loves those mid-range shots, which, as good as he is at them, he's arguably, and I think probably is, the greatest mid-range shooter of all time. You can be the GOAT mid-range scorer, but that's all you do. You can't coast on that. It's a losing formula, and when I saw Cat match up with him, going into that series, everyone was like, yeah, Jaden McDaniels, he's going to lock up Kevin Durant. No, they put fucking Karl Anthony Towns on him. Because they were like, yeah, Kevin will hit some mid-range pull-ups over Cat. That's going to happen. That's always going to happen. But he's not going to blow by him. He's not going to burn you with high-volume three-point shooting. He's going to be as efficient as you can be with an inefficient play style. And at the end of the day, that to me makes him a much worse player than like LeBron James. I think Devin Booker is a better player because he has more versatility to his offensive approach. I don't think a lot of people have properly grasped the degree in which he's fallen off just because he's managed to still put up high volume scoring on good efficiency. I get that you can look at his basketball reference and not see some steep decline, but peak Kevin Durant is so much better of a player than current Kevin Durant. For the New Orleans Pelicans, I couldn't really pick anybody. I would have said Brandon Ingram beforehand. However, that's kind of been like, there's been a lot of slander for Brandon Ingram, a lot of people getting low on him this offseason. I honestly don't know where it came from on such short notice. I'm lower on him for the same reasons that I'm lower on DeRozan than a lot of people. Like, you are good at this play style. You are objectively very good at playing this play style. But how good is that play style? Is that the way you want your team to play? The answer is no. That's just not ideal. That's not the way you want to do things. He's not an ideal fit next to Zion. However, I also feel like I'd rather keep him than trade him for much lower value. I don't really think he's that overrated anymore because a lot of people have soured on him in really short notice. For the Los Angeles Lakers, so I previously mentioned that Rudy described Jonas Valanciunas as training wheels for teams. To me, D'Angelo Russell is the point guard version of that. He is an 18-point per game score, 7 assists per game guy, decent efficiency, really good three-point shooting. You really can't find Russell's production at any other player at his level of trade value. But to me, that's a massive red flag. Like, okay, this guy's an 18-7 on good efficiency guy, but everyone's valuing him way lower than those guys are otherwise valued. That's because he has been bad in the playoffs. He's had some good moments here or there. I think he had a really good game or two in the playoffs last year, and then some horrible ones after that. Terrible defensive player. So yeah, I think he is kind of a ceiling capper for the Lakers, and they don't want to move on from him because they can't really get his production from someone else. Also, I feel like if you don't mix it up, you're just always going to have mediocrity at that position. For the Sacramento Kings, this one hurts because I really like this player, but I'm going to go with Keegan Murray. I like Keegan a lot, but I saw a lot of Sacramento Kings fans acting like it was like sacrilegious to consider trading him for Lauri Markkanen. Like, a guy who's 3 years older and a proven all-star isn't worth trading for a guy who one, regressed a lot as a three-point shooter in terms of his efficiency this previous season, and is 24 years old. Like, it's not like we're talking about some super young player. I think Keegan Murray can be an all-star tier guy, but I view him as like a Rashard Lewis guy who like could make one or two and be a super complimentary role player otherwise. And I don't really think he'll ever be as good as Lauri Markkanen is. So when I saw that, I was like, man, maybe people are overselling how good Keegan Murray can be. Because he will be a good player. He has been a good player already. As good as Lauri Markkanen, or no, this guy's untouchable. You can't trade him for a 25 point per game scorer who's extremely efficient. That's just silly. It's extremely silly, and yeah, I lost. I was like, damn, people taking that shit a little too far once I saw that. For the Golden State Warriors, I'm going with Jonathan Kuminga. I think the combination of perplexity we have felt for Kuminga in the past, as well as the desperation for any level of offensive creation for the Warriors as a whole, he gets overrated because of that. His shooting and shot creation really only get passing grades at best. He fits well in the flow of Golden State's offense, which is good, but I've seen a lot of people act like he's going to be their savior, and I think he's very far from being their savior. The Warriors also seem to agree, claiming, I've seen a bunch of reports that they would rather lose Kuminga than Podziemski. Podziemski is an all-around guy. Kuminga is a rim runner. I understand where they're coming from there, and Kuminga he's just so far from saving the Warriors. For the Houston Rockets, Dillon Brooks. So real quick, for the last 28 games of the season, Dillon shot 29% from three. He started the year super hot and shot 41% for the first 44 games, but I think he fell back down to earth hard in the latter half of the season, and not a lot of people recognized that and acted like his changes to his game are just there, and he doesn't have his same bad tendencies. He doesn't have his same bad jump shot. His mid-range tendency went up more and more as the season went along. Like, he could control himself for a little bit, but only a little bit, before he fell right back into bad habits. For the Utah Jazz, I will go with Jordan Clarkson. On the shoot-around, we all realized collectively that Jordan Clarkson is a worse player than we thought. He had a 52% true shooting last season while taking 15 shots per game. Like, 17 points on 15 shots is bad. 6% below league average true shooting percentage is bad. Under 30% three-point shooting as a high-volume three-point shooter is just awful. Jordan Clarkson, just bad, just straight up bad. For the Memphis Grizzlies, this is one where I have to make a pick. I went with Santi Aldama just because I feel like Memphis was a little higher on him as a franchise than they really should be. But that's all I really got. There's not really overrated players on the Grizzlies. I just have to pick somebody. San Antonio Spurs, Jeremy Sohan. I hate to keep ringing this bell, but I simply do not believe that a non-shooting threat wing, regardless of what else they may bring to the table, is a good idea. I don't think it really works. Sohan is a good defender and playmaker. There's no denying it. He's a pretty decent rebounder. He can't shoot from anywhere. 31% from three, 36% from floater range, 30% on mid-range jumpers. It is a level of bad that I don't think it is fixable. People acting like he's a core part of that Spurs future, I don't understand it. I think he will be a serviceable backup role player throughout his career, and he'll be in the NBA for a decent stretch of time because of his defense, because of his playmaking, but in no way is he like integral to their future. It's just not. I don't think that's the case at all. For the Portland Trailblazers, I am going with Anthony Simons. I could not come up with one, so I asked my single Blazers fan friend, and he said that the fan base overrates Simons' trade value sometimes. That's all I could really get. There wasn't really anybody else on the Blazers who you could categorize as overrated. So yeah, Anthony Simons, if I have to pick somebody. Sorry if I said your favorite player was overrated in this video, but there's a decent chance you're at fault. So sounds like a you problem, TBH. But yeah, that is it. Shout out to Nick for editing this video, and goodbye.